Today, this is going to be an actual whiteboard discussion where we're going to talk about kind of applications and how you build into a data architecture. I know that, when we talk about data architecture, really we're talking about the ability to do, data modeling, for example, being able to match things up. We're talking really about this ability to provide weights and balances, right, on what we're doing. We're looking at different processes and other things that really make up what we call an MLOps environment or a framework. And this environment allows really for those data pipes to come in, right, of data from whatever that environment is, whether it's a relational database right here where you have, columns and rows, where it's kind of structured data, down to really just bits and pieces of semi-structured data or non-structured data at all, right? So all of these things providing, that data into ultimately this MLOps framework that produces on this side really produces, whatever it is that you want from it. In this case, let's just say it's a chat bot of some sort, but it could be I don't know, maybe drones or something like that, right? That that are looking to do something on the ground, for example, maybe, looking after hitting a truck or something. I don't know. Maybe delivering a package, an Amazon package to a truck, right? So whatever that looks like, we want to be able to make sure, and we'll put this as a little package here. We want to make sure that all of this data can go on this environment. So whatever the execution is for the data itself, we need to be able to transform it, right, into one of these areas. So how do we do this when we have over here, we have legacy data environments? And let's go ahead and put that on a different layer here real quick so we don't mess up our other drawing. And we'll go ahead and lock that layer there. All right. So here, let's say that we have these legacy servers and storage. So within these environments, you're going to have all types of information, right? It'll be structured, unstructured data. It will be applications themselves, right? So whatever that application looks like, there's going to be data that exists inside this environment. So how do you get from here, really, how do we get from this point over to this point? Well, this right here, this section here, when we really start talking about visualization and, this type of stuff over here, chatbots, things of that nature. Now, it could easily be, anything, could be anything, right? But here we want this. Most common, I guess, would be things like maybe a dashboard, right, that shows specific things in a meeting or activities, right, and exactly how we work through that and get that data. That's really very important to the operation. But because we can't go directly from, well, let me rephrase that. So how do we go directly from here, where the legacy data is, and just integrate it into some sort of dashboard? Now, that dashboard may be another system. Let's just say that this is Power BI. Okay. So we're doing visualization within Power BI. This could be a different application, could be a number of things. But let's just say that's what it is that we're trying to do. With one server dumping it in here, let's make that a little more complicated. So instead of being just Power BI, let's stick here let's stick another application in the middle. So whatever that is, and we'll just call it app here. Okay. So now in between here, we have an app that then is going to provide for us whatever that visualization looks like. Okay. Maybe a graph or something like that. So why is this complicated? Well, this becomes a little bit complicated, and I'm going to hide that layer down there so we could just talk a little bit about this. This becomes difficult because we have to, this app itself is going to have some form of structure. Most likely it's going to be a structured data environment where it has columns and rows of information. So for example, let's do one here. Let's make that a little smaller. Let's just make it 2 columns and rows. We're going to put street, ST, and city, CTY. So in the app, that's what the data is known as. Now here inside our legacy app, when we look at here, we have street and city spelt out. Okay. So this is no big deal, right? So what we do is we say, okay, this here, we need to map street to street, and then we need to map city over to city. Okay. So this is really what we're talking about when we talk about kind of MLOps, where we're going to build here some sort of data model. So the model itself is going to basically say street is equal to street. So that's going to be the data piece, right? And so now when this data streams in, we know what it's going to be, where it's going to be. And of course, you know, we have to look at the integrity of the data, what type of data it is, right? And kind of move all that information in to where it needs to be. Because ultimately, when we talk about going down, and this isn't, I colored that on a different layer, but when we talk about here, going down into like an AI run environment here, we're really talking about this becomes vectorized data. So here, it's important to note that this is, generally speaking, static information. Static meaning that it is a dashboard. It's a product that's producing some form of a result. So it's relatively static. Now, the information feeding into it and from this data model, right, that goes into it, those are all dynamic, right? This information could be very fluid over here. But at the end of the day, this is static, whereas AI is a generative process where it's really looking at information, and this becomes vectorized data. So this is an important, a really, really important distinction between, you know, understanding how data visualization occurs and really the difference between what artificial intelligence is going to bring to the game and what we're currently doing, which is really more of this static type of environment. So let's play this model out just a little bit more for conversation's sake. Let's say that we have this, and we all understand now that street equals ST, city equals CTY. That seems easy enough, but the number of fields here that we have, the number of fields, so we'll just say number of columns in this example, let's say equals 100. So now we need to do this mapping 100 times, okay, for all types of data. This is one data source. Now, let's say that our data sources are, let's say maybe we have 50 data sources total. And remember, these are all maybe different applications, right, that have different sets of data now, right? And they all may have columns that equal 100 as well. So now we're doing all of this conversion here, right here at this level, 50 plus apps or whatever the amount. It doesn't have to be apps, by the way. It could be whatever these legacy data sets are, right? So we'll kind of color those in. So whatever these legacy data sets are, wherever those data sources are, we're going to have to build this model. We're going to have to understand what it is, what maps to what. Okay, because without that, we cannot produce this. Okay, if we don't have that, this translation will never occur, and then this will never occur either. So we have to be able to do the mapping. And this becomes, so for many environments, let's say, okay, so you don't have the MLOps environment up, what do I do? Well, then the alternative here is to download this to what? A structured file, maybe a CSV or XLS file, right? And now I want to import this directly into this app. Well, remember that these fields right here, this column is still street, and this column here is still city, or whatever it is. We're still going to have to do the mapping over here. So what does that look like from a manual perspective? Well, the manual perspective means that I need to, every single time I download this CSV, right? This is a download or an export. Every time I do that, I'm going to have to convert this data here. I'm going to have to convert it to match the naming convention there. Ugly, right? This requires people. It's just as simple as that. It's going to require a lot of people. So you're going to have to, in order to build this, you're really going to have to do this. And this, quite frankly, is kind of the quandary that a lot of organizations sit in today. Why? Because they don't want to hear this. This is not the message they want to hear. First of all, leadership does not even closely want to hear this message. What leadership wants to hear is that we can go directly from, and let's add another layer here. Leadership wants to hear in general, and this is not from my current experience, by the way. I'm just talking in general. Leadership wants to hear that these legacy files here, all of this legacy data, even if it has to be exported as a CSV file, should easily be consumed by this new whiz-bang application that we have to produce my whiz-bang results. The reality is that just doesn't exist. You cannot do that for the reasons that I've explained here on the screen. It's just simply not possible. So your environment has to work out a way to not do this. This export thing is a no-go. That's maybe a stopgap, but that's really not the direction that you need to go. The direction that needs to happen in this environment, for example, is you may be running some activity here on this side. You may be having people, you may be having people do this activity here today as a stopgap. But you have to make the investment here to build this out. Because without this, and I'll highlight that in orange, without this environment here, this MLOps framework, which will automatically take the data pipes from all of this data, it doesn't matter where the data comes from, it just will take any of the data, right? So we want the ability to pipe in all types of data from all over our systems, right? And so that feeds into this MLOps framework, which ultimately will do these type of things. In addition, we'll do the simple things like develop these dashboards and things of that nature. Now, another twist to this is this could also, if you're really committed to this app here, if you're committed to this app, this can also take and move data that way as well. So now your data flows out of here, right, through this pipe, and now it becomes part of that app. So you can merge it with other data. Actually, the right way to do it would probably be to do it this way. The data should flow this way, but you could flow data that way if you want. So the moral to this story, this is the age-old problem. You do not want to do what's highlighted in yellow. This is only a stopgap. And if your organization is currently doing this today, you need to develop a plan to get out. And the way you get out of this scenario is you develop here, you develop this plan that I'm doing in green. Okay, this is the plan that you need to do. You need to invest, but then when you do it, your data becomes vectorized and you open up a whole new world here for all of these type of activities in addition to these activities. So we really need to kind of move into this green here in the future. Now, I'll mention one last thing just in parting. This then prepares us for what's next, which is quantum. Now, quantum probably in the 2030 timeframe, but as we get our house in order here and we really get rid of all of this other stuff, this distraction that's all around us, and we just start having a very simple environment, then we're really talking here where quantum now becomes a very viable solution, because we'll be piping in data so fast that we'll have reached our limits, and we're going to need the strength of quantum, which is going to take basically this vectorized data, which is really built on ones and zeros, and change it into a whole nother world for us. So we're not going to talk about that in this video, but that's about it. So good luck with your adventures here of building out these environments. It's really, really important that we understand that it's not just as simple as moving data from A to Z. And I don't think anybody really thinks it's that simple, but there are steps that we need to go to make this happen. Good luck.